Bubbies Boarding Podcast. We're joined by almost our full staff: Eric, Daniel, Kfir, Ellie, and Mark. Welcome everybody. Tonight we're going to talk about this very current events. We're going to talk about the war in Ukraine. Remember, Putin invaded sovereign nation of the Ukraine. And right now, as we're speaking, it seems like the Ukrainians are putting up a pretty good fight against Putin. Right now, it seems like Kiev. It's very interesting, I think, how Kiev has so many different spellings. When I was growing up, Kiev was K-I-E-V, and now it's spelled whatever. It's spelled,
and that when I was younger, I didn't even know it existed.
Right. And when I was younger, I remember years ago, I think that when I was in 7th grade, I think that was in 1977, when the Soviet Union was still around, USSR was still around. We had lots of students lots of students coming into my class from the former Soviet Union. Well, then it was the Soviet Union, and there were such things as refuseniks.
Wait, I want to hear what Mark has to say about it quickly.
And we had a student coming in from Soviet Georgia. In the same year, we had a student coming in from Odessa. And I had no idea that Odessa was actually part of Ukraine. And but the most tragic thing about this week was that Babi Yar, site of mass killings of so many Jews, where a memorial museum was dedicated just last year, 2 years ago, by President Zelensky, was bombed by Vladimir Putin and his thugs.
Wait, can we go back to the bit about Kiev? About why people are calling it Kiev? Yeah. Why do people start calling it Kiev? Kiev. What the hell is Kiev?
Well, Lviv.
Or Lviv. Or Kharkiv.
Right.
Oh, I forgot my car keys. Honey, where did I put the car keys?
Are we still?
I'll pay for your car. Yeah, we are still.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
It's also called Lviv.
Yeah.
Last week was called Lvov.
Yeah, it's so funny, because it's like it's to give the same people who like always got on your case about wearing masks and taking coronavirus seriously, and thinking that corona was a real thing. So those same people are now coming and like, no, it's Kiev, not Kiev. If you say that it's Kiev, you're obviously a Putin supporter. Yeah.
And I think and Lvov, the Lubavitch Hasidim are from Lvov.
Yeah.
So let's redirect this podcast. Let's bring it back to shore.
I am just
right now, we're way.
Well,
Let's talk about a few topics. I'm going to direct it. I want to talk about number one, Israel's reaction, or not, or lack of reaction to what is going on in Russia, what is going on in the Ukraine.
Ukraine's lack of reaction.
Is Israel doing enough? By a few days ago, by them turning away the refugees that now are being accepted, was that the proper behavior? Understanding that during the Holocaust, when the Jews tried entering many countries closed their doors to them. That's one topic. Another topic is, and I think it's important, the people that have gone out of their own volition to their own volition to go and fight in a war that isn't theirs. like we have, from what I've seen on social media and whatever, there are many people that have packed their stuff together from America, from England, regardless of being, part of an army or not. I've seen that also some ex-Israeli soldiers that have Russian heritage, Ukrainian heritage have also gone to fight. Like how I wanna get some a feel of our thoughts on that.
Okay, I'd like to start off. Whenever you talk about war, there's many different levels. What I'm talking about is when you talk about a war, a nation's decision whether or not to join a war and what position they're going to play in the war, what role they're going to play in the war. You're talking on various different levels. Israel's decision whether or not to support Ukraine, it places them in a very precarious position with Putin and Putin's involvement in Syria. Okay, so it's not Pashut.
Well, that's what I was saying.
And the United States involvement or underwhelming show of support is also driven totally by what the involvement or lack of involvement will do and will mean to, as I said the other day, the average American's pocketbook. Already we're seeing rising prices in oil and gas and in grains, corn. Lots of people's pocketbooks are going to be injured. We're going to feel it at the pump. We're going to feel it in the grocery store. We're going to feel it everywhere. The stock exchange 2 days ago was took a big plunge. Yesterday it was up a little bit by the end of the day. But so there's lots of different, and no wartime president, except for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, was popular. Okay. Woodrow Wilson was very unpopular during World War I. FDR was popular during World War II, but and Truman enjoyed popularity by the end of World War II. The Korean War, I don't think Eisenhower was extremely popular during. Maybe he was during Vietnam. LBJ, Nixon, Kennedy. Kennedy had lived. Who knows whether Kennedy would have been very popular? Because it screw up in the Bay of Pigs, and then in our involvement in the Americans' involvement in Vietnam, which really started around Kennedy's time. Anyways, I see Mark is chewing at the bit.
Mark wanted his. I saw his heated look.
Yeah.
Okay, it's interesting that you bring up, all these wartime presidents and everything. When was the last time there was a war that was actually justified? Well, there's nothing really justified in, let's say, Israel. What is Israel doing when it comes to Ukraine? Israel's underwhelming reaction. How many more Nazi militias does Israel have to fund and arm in the Ukraine? It's a crazy thing looking on Twitter and you see Nazis, literal Nazis from the Azov battalion in the Ukraine carrying Tabor rifles. Okay, Tabor, Israeli rifles. Okay, when you have the majority of the Israeli armed services, Krabi soldiers carrying around the Tabor rifle. It's a crazy thing that there are more Azov battalion Ukrainian soldiers carrying Tabors than Israeli soldiers actually carrying this gun. So this question is for you, Ali. What do you think Israel should do more to help the Ukrainians?
Come on, Ali.
I feel like Israel should do what they do on the border of Israel and Syria. When the refugees are seeking aid, to set up humanitarian aid field hospitals outside of the borders of the Ukraine, to help with that, to help these people that have been through such help. They don't necessarily have to be involved if they want to stay out. They don't have to be involved militarily. I also don't think that is the right step for Israel based on the enemies around Israel that are controlled by Russia. Okay, but to have some more humanitarian aid in that matter, if we're able to help Syrian refugees and refugees from Darfur and refugees from Eritrea and refugees from all over that make it in through our borders, then we should have field hospitals on the borders of the Ukraine to assist when it comes to that.
So here, guys, this is a pitch, okay, for a TV show idea that I just had. Okay? Let's say...
Guys, such a good counter argument, Mark.
No, but let's say, my counter argument is, okay, let's say we have Ukrainian refugees, okay? These Ukrainian refugees don't have to go through a desert in order to get to Israel. Because, yeah, sure, Israel helps refugees from Eritrea and from Darfur and from Africa. Yeah, sure, but these refugees had to go through hell in order to get here. Ukrainians to get here, they have to go through a Nefesh B'Nefesh booth, line at a Nefesh B'Nefesh booth in what's on Kiev.
Right now they don't have that ability. Right now they're running. They're going through Poland to reach Hatzalah.
When they go to Romania,
delegation in order to help them fly back to Israel. To fly to Israel and seek refuge there. Why does it have to come from a private organization? Why can't the IDF, a government-led organization, be that Yichud Hatzalah?
That's true. Why? That is actually a good question. Do you guys know that the Magen David Adom, Magen David Adom, Israeli Red Cross. For our listeners out there that don't know what Magen David Adom is. Okay, did you guys know that it's actually a private organization? It's not run by the government. You guys know that?
I did not know that.
Eric is here. Listeners at home, Eric did not know that. Okay, that's a crazy thing. That really is. I personally do think that we should be helping Ukrainian refugees more. But a lot of things in this war, we don't actually look at how the West and America and NATO helped contribute towards it. And I think that's really lost.
Why isn't Israel part of NATO?
That is actually a very good question. Let's talk about NATO for a second, listeners.
What is NATO? Explain to the viewers.
So what is NATO? Okay, so NATO was formed in 1951. Listeners at home, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not sitting in front of a computer. But anyways, yeah, so it was formed right after World War II as a means of making sure Germany doesn't become strong again, and to contain the Soviet Union from expanding. Because as many of you listeners at home may know, after World War II, the Soviet Union took up many countries in
1949.
So it was formed in 1949. So I was off by 2
Thank you very much, Alan Smenowitz, for your fact checking.
Yeah, thanks for checking my fact. about
Our
NATO.
moderator.
Yeah, because we could have canceled.
But it's actually very interesting looking at the formation of NATO. Why does NATO exist? Why does NATO exist after 1991? If it is a peacekeeping organization and is supposed to be involved with keeping the peace in Europe, why were so many head officers of NATO, why are so many of them Nazis? Actual literal Nazis from Nazi Germany. What was more important to NATO? Was it containing the Soviet Union or was it keeping peace? Because if it's meant to keep peace, why was it aggressively expanding over Eastern Europe after Reagan gave the reassurance to Gorbachev that NATO won't expand into Eastern Europe? And these are actually very good questions that people should ask. Okay, should more American soldiers lose their lives? Okay, because when people are talking about, getting the world involved, people are talking about getting America involved. Because that's what it is in the end.
We're talking about getting superpowers. Armies that can attend to this type of war. You're not going to send in a small army against Russia. It's not it's not feasible. So the superpowers, the United States, England, China. China's okay, right? China's not okay.
No, China is.
Maybe not. Okay, not China, but like countries, France. Countries that have the ability, have the firepower to, come to the aid of the Ukrainians. And I'm just going to put this out there. Have you guys seen the Chechens that came to Russia's aid? They all look like Islamic Vikings. It's really crazy. I would be scared to be up against these guys.
When you think about it, they almost look like pirates.
Yeah, kind of look like
Because
pirates. And they all have the same beard.
It's actually
They
dark.
all have the same type of beard. They all have the same type of beard.
And Belarus also joined the fight.
Yeah, but the thing though about the difference between Belarus and Chechnya and Russia and the Ukraine is that all of these places border each other. And the United States and England and France don't. So, and now we have the choice of not entering a world war. Okay, because people talk about the world wars like all these world wars were justified. But only a third of World War II was justified.
I don't think.
Okay, only a third of World War II was justified, and World War I wasn't justified.
There's also great fear. That we're going to enter a nuclear war. And nobody wants to start a nuclear war. And if any other country, if the United States, Canada, England, France, Israel, if any other country enters the war against Russia, it will turn into a nuclear war. Because the Russians have nuclear capabilities. And Putin is not afraid to use it. I mean, I don't know if he's afraid or not, but he's a bit of a lunatic. And if anybody of you viewers know how Putin goes around topless and on a horse, that's exactly how I am right now, topless on a horse.
There's a video with Putin on the bear.
All right. Let me get to my point of view. All right.
Please, Eric.
Queen Elizabeth. I don't know if she still has corona, but she did get sick, and I wish her a speedy recovery.
Yes,
And no one's talking about Queen Elizabeth.
This is the Bubbies Boarding
Nobody's talking
Podcast.
about Queen Elizabeth.
Wishing Queen Elizabeth Refuah Shalema.
The Queen.
Refuah Shalema
Like
be
our
grandmother.
Wishing the Queen. Not Queen Elizabeth. No one calls her Queen Elizabeth.
Her Majesty.
She's
Her
the Queen
Majesty
Elizabeth.
it
little
is
bit.
the queen, or it is the crown. How crazy it is that no one will intervene because it's going to lead into a world nuclear war. No one's going to intervene, and miprinat, like as far as the other countries are concerned, when it comes to Ukraine, they'd rather just like, okay, fine, you know what, Russia just take over Ukraine, and let's avoid a nuclear war. You really think that this crazy asshole of a guy, which by the way we're working really hard on getting him onto our podcast for a cameo, Putin?
Yes, we did ask Vladimir Putin for his input, and he said, sorry, I'm very, very busy now.
He sounds like he just learned a few Starim of Gemara, but that's fine. So I'm just saying, like you really think he's gonna stop? This power-hungry dictator of a man is going to stop at the Ukraine? He's not going to stop there.
He's
going to go to any other country that came to the aid of Ukraine.
He's probably going to stop at Lithuania.
Because it's a big FU, and it's like a big he's like showing his like muscles, and
you
he's trying to,
you never
I don't think he would do that.
You never view a war in a vacuum. Wars have history, and there have been other wars that other countries have gotten involved with because we were fearful of communism. World War II, after World War II and the forming of the Soviet Union, we had something called the Red Scare. And that's why we got involved in the Korean conflict. And that's why America got involved in Vietnam. Because we were afraid of communism, the spread of communism. Then America got involved in a war in Afghanistan and Iraq, the Persian Gulf. I think that you have a very good point about humanitarian aid and responsibility to help the Ukrainians because they're the obvious victims in this war. Although Mark is in disagreement about that, it's the poor Russians who are victim. And
Are you actually disagreeing?
no.
No, I don't think the Russians are the victims in this situation.
Do you
I
think
do
the
think
Ukrainians?
no, but I do think NATO and the West, and especially the United States, should look deep in their hearts and think, what are the consequences of 30 years of antagonizing a country that you helped destroy, which is Russia. Russia was destroyed by the United States during the 80s and 90s, during shock therapy, which for our listeners is the mass privatization of the former Soviet Union, and which really set up all the oligarchs. Okay, I would like our listeners at home to go online tonight and Google the history of all these oligarchs and how they got all this money and where this money is currently kept. Okay, what banks this money is currently kept.
Yeah, I was also mean to Gil Gamliel also on the watch on Twitter.
Who?
Gil Gamliel.
Oh,
Yeah, because that thing with Yom Kippur, with her going, making the lockdown,
Right.
and then going to celebrate Yom Kippur, of all places, in Tveria.
Right.
Okay, you go to all places. Okay, you're breaking the law. Okay, a law you passed. Okay, and you break the law to go where? Tveria. You couldn't pay me. I think you could pay me 10,000 shekel and I had to go to Tveria.
Really?
But I think it starts there. I think it starts at 10,000 shekel, and I would drive to Tveria.
Wow.
for 10,000 shekel.
Nothing to do with Twitter.
Huh?
Yeah, nothing to do with Twitter.
Yeah, this is Kfir, Daniel's friend.
Yeah.
For our BB listeners at home, and he says that there's nothing to do with Tveria.
He lives up north.
And this guy lives up north, okay?
3 minutes from Twitter.
Yeah, and he lives like 30 minutes away from Tveria.
3 minutes.
3 minutes away
Okay,
from Tveria.
don't say where he lives because there's serial killers that listen to our podcast.
Yes, this is Bubbies Boarding Podcast, the serial killer's #1 podcast.
And where sympathies come to listen,
Okay.
to relax.
To relax. But anyways, yeah, so listen. You have to think of the people who govern your country, okay? When you have this woman, okay, a minister in your government, and she actually breaks the law that she passed in order to go to Syria for Yom Kippur. Why?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why, listeners, is it's to say, say to you,
F you.
F you. F you, I'm going to do what I want because I can. Okay? And that is what they do. Nowadays, what do we have? Okay, what do we the people have? What weapon do we have? Let's quote unquote
Social
weapon.
media.
Social media. And what do they do? What do they do? What do they do to us on social media? When we say things they don't like, they ban us.
Cancel us.
They cancel us, and that's the real topic of today's podcast: cancel culture. Is it good?
Is
it good?
It's terrible. I think everyone should have a voice. Everyone should have a voice.
It
I think
damages.
that we
It goes
should-
against my free speech. I think I have, as a citizen, my right is free
That's
speech.
just right. That's correct.
You know,
That's
if I
correct.
want to
Our
say
founding
the N
fathers-
word,
Our founding fathers in the Constitution, the Constitution felt that this was so important. The right to free speech was so important that they made it part of the Bill of Rights. Right? Free speech. We mustn't forget that when the United States when the colonies were under control of the British, we did not have free speech. We were denied free speech. All right. There is every viewer, every listener, everybody has the right. If you don't agree with what somebody is saying, don't listen to him. There are enough channels on TV. There are enough channels on the radio. There are enough opinions on the internet. If you don't like a person's opinion, you have the right to disagree. There are limits to free speech, but I don't think saying something that somebody else does not like, I don't think that's a limit. That's the limit. Okay? People are, what is limited? When are you limited? You're limited if you are libelous. You're limited if you are threatening somebody's life. You're limited if you're screaming fire in a crowded movie theater. Those are the limits of free speech. So if you're not happy with what somebody has to say, change the channel. If somebody is not happy with what's expressed, the views that are expressed in this podcast, don't listen to this podcast.
Or send an email to.
Or send an email to Bubbies Boarding Podcast @gmail.com.
You know I'm waiting, just anticipating.